Rob has alluded to it. He thinks that everybody's going a bit overboard with the Colorado Buffaloes football team and their upset win of TCU under new head coach Deion Sanders, who's making his debut. Rob G, give us kind of a synopsis of what all is going on with this football team surrounding them.
Sure thing. Well, first off, let's start off with the Joe Public, the bettors. We like to formulate a lot of our segments around what the average bettor is doing. We do a betting segment, obviously, with BetMGM and Lamar Mitchell.
Yes.
So, number one, ever since Colorado upset TCU, according to DraftKings, there are more bets and more money placed on Colorado this past weekend to win the national championship than any other team in the country. There's more. There is more money and more bets total being bet this weekend on Colorado versus Nebraska, 80% of the bets being on Colorado, than 14 of the NFL games coming up in week 1.
Wow.
Okay.
That says a lot.
Here's another one. According to FanDuel, there are now more bets and more money placed on both Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter to win the Heisman than any other player in the country. It gets worse. So that's just Joe Public. You know, that can be easily manipulated, right? It's just fans. They're being swayed by what they're seeing on TV, on Undisputed, on First Take, First Things First, these shows like that, right? Deion Sanders went on TV this week on Undisputed and said that if Travis Hunter went into the NFL draft, not only would he be first round at either wide receiver or cornerback, he would be first overall pick consideration at both positions. Shedeur Sanders, rather than big up somebody else, bigging up himself. They asked him, what's the difference between playing at the FBS level and the FCS level? Of course, he played at Jackson State for 2 seasons. Said, not much at all, other than the defensive linemen get off blocks a little bit easier at the FCS level. But other than that, it's pretty much the same thing. This after 1 game at the FBS level, Shedeur Sanders. Rob Parker, your thoughts?
Chris, I'm not going to poo-poo what they did. That's a tremendous way to come out of the gate. What they did against the runner-up in the national championship game, all of that is great. So I don't want to sound like I'm Debbie Downer, and I'm a sourpuss, and I'm the poo-poo king, which I am. But I'm going to poo-poo this. Talk about an overreaction to 1 game, and it was a great 1 game. You don't need to do all this. I have no idea why they feel compelled to do this. There's a schedule to play. There's a reason Deion was brought in, because they had only won 1 game last year. So, yeah, when you win your first game and you only won 1 game last year, you think you're heading that way. People with the, running down to Vegas to throw their money on it on everything that's Colorado now after 1 game is just so typical of where we are now, Chris. Everybody just this is it. It's the recency bias. It's what happened last night is better than anything that ever happened before. And people going off the deep end to making something. Dude, this could be a great season. This also could be the only game they win all year. I'm just saying, like this could be. And I think you got to be careful. And I brought up the Indianapolis Colts, Chris, just for a reason. It's not exactly the same. Jeff Saturday hadn't coached at all. Deion's been a coach, so it's different. But I'm talking about the reaction of people after 1 game. And no reaction more than Bill Cowher's showed me how people get turned around and flipped overnight. Bill Cowher, a former coach, downed the whole thing idea that a guy with no coaching experience should take over an NFL team in Jeff Saturday. Chris, they won that game, and Bill Cowher flipped. Oh, he's a leader of men, blah, 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 blah. like, is this Bill Cowher who was on the other day saying, like, this is a travesty? All I'm saying is pump the brakes. Pump the brakes I'm not buying into all of this after one game. Now they have tape, film on everybody, Chris. Now they'll adjust. Colorado's not sneaking up on anybody. Am I saying they're never going to win another game? No, that's not what I'm saying. I just think after one game and the press conference with Deion, calling out the writers, wanting them to, cash their tickets or receipts and all this other stuff. Like that's not the writer's job to be homers and, you don't believe, you didn't believe, I read what you wrote. Would Deion have said that had he lost?
Well, I think,
could you one last thing, Chris? Could you have trashed Deion if they had lost that game to say, see, Deion can't coach, he's in over his head, and then you would say, no, you know what the pushback would be? It's just one game.
I think there's a lot of, you said a lot. I'm going to try to offer a sober-minded analysis of all that. Number one, with all of the betting, you can't, half of that is not on the Colorado team, right? Like, you can't blame them.
No. It's just the people.
If people want to run out and all of a sudden put their money on them. And let's face it, Rob, I don't bet. You bet. Some of these people are saying, hey, I don't necessarily think they're going to win the national championship, but at these odds, whatever they are, I'll throw a little money at it. You know what I'm saying? So I think there's an element of that to it. I think with Deion, like you said, challenging the media, do you believe now and all that? Number one, that's always been his personality. We talked about that in the first hour, right? When he was a player, very flamboyant, had the rap album, all of that stuff. So that's just who he is and who he's been. I also think, Rob, that people get media mixed up now. Because you came up with newspapers, and I wrote for the New York Times and other papers, and you wrote for other papers. And we were objective. Like, as a journalist, you're objective. Even when you covered a team.
Right.
Even when you were a beat writer, you were objective. I covered the Cavs. I'm not pulling for the Cavs, but I'm being objective. I'm not pulling for the Knicks when I cover them.
If they win or lose, you don't lose any sleep,
I just have to be objective. Right, I have to be objective. But now, Rob, a lot of us who started in journalism are now on opinion shows. Skip started as a journalist, Skip Bayless. He clearly is a Cowboys fan and makes no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Stephen A. obviously started as a journalist. Clearly a Yankees fan or a Steelers fan, like Knicks fans. And so they're outwardly pulling for them on the air. Some people might be saying, well, Nick, right? But Nick didn't start as a journalist. Nick started on radio. But he's a Chiefs fan, obviously. But my point is, a lot of people, I think, Rob, they still, like Deion probably still looks at Skip like he's a journalist. And because he covered, he was playing for the Cowboys when Skip was covering them or writing columns and stuff. And so he sees Skip pulling for the Cowboys, believing in the Cowboys and all that. So I think that has led to some of this. I know totally where you're coming from, but I think you understand where I'm coming from, and people just get confused, But overall, this is what Colorado has to be concerned with. And like you said, great win, Rob. We talked about it Friday.
Win, Chris. It's great.
I said, right, I'm going to watch the game, and I firmly thought it would be out of hand by halftime in TCU's favor. Not because I've scouted TCU, not because I had scouted Colorado, but honestly, I was just going off the line. And TCU was in the national
21
championship
points,
last
Chris.
year. Right. It was like, okay, they probably going to blow them out. Colorado's 1-11. How quickly can Deion do this? But it turned out to be a great game, and I'm happy for them, and it was awesome. And it's fun now. It's awesome that, there's all this excitement about them. But, Rob, this. And I said on First Things First yesterday, I believe in Deion Sanders. I believe in Shedeur Sanders. I believe in Travis Hunter. I believe in, I think it's Dylan Edwards, the running back, who had those 135 yards receiving. Great game by him, too. But I'm not ready to say they're going to win the Pac-12. I'm not ready to say they're going to make a playoff. They got some big games coming. They got Oregon, which is ranked. They got USC with Caleb Williams coming up all within the next month. So we will find out in short order how for real they are. But this is what they have to beware of. Be careful about, Rob. Like Deion calling out the reporter and all the, just all the talk. If you lose, if they go, it'll start long before this, but if they finish 5-5 or 5-6, 6-5, whatever, that will actually have been a good turnaround. But Rob, whenever they lose their next game, if it's early,
yep,
they're going to be getting criticized. Now, if they go into USC 3-0, 4-0, have beaten Oregon, and barely lose to USC, people are going to give them love. They're legit, and they deserve it. They're legit. But if they lose to Nebraska, Rob, if they lose to Colorado State, who they play after that, they going after Deion and the Buffalo. So that's what they have to be concerned about.
No, there's no doubt, Chris. And that's what I'm talking about, is that you don't need to do all that. That win, Chris, spoke for itself.
Right.
It really, really did. Like Deion, I wouldn't have to beat my chest and tell people, look at this win and look at what we were able to do. Man, are you kidding? 21-point underdogs on the road, and you pull that off?
No
questions?
doubt.
You got questions? What questions for me? No, because that's all I would be like. Okay, no, and
no, Rob,
and I get what you're saying about his personality and all
Right.
that, but just don't put yourself into a spot, paint yourself into a corner after a game, because
Right.
there's just so many. The same way I don't think it would have been fair, Chris, had they lost 45-0, to
Right,
say
to
that
rip 'em.
Deion is over his head, he can't coach, and they got a horrible roster, and his kids, the only reason his son is on the team is because he's
Right.
like, that would be wrong too.
Right. No, look, Deion it's great that he's got a joy about him, a charisma about him. Rob, that
he's
even
tremendous.
when he's being arrogant, it comes off almost as fun-loving and, jovial and all that. But make no mistake about it. If they go out there and lay an egg against Nebraska, people coming for you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because of
this.
Right.
Yep.
And
They
it'll
coming
be
for
like,
you.
and then they'll be saying it was a fluke.
Yep.
And then they'll be the excuse. Oh, see, okay, they got film on you now. Look at what Deion couldn't make any adjustments. Oh, they threw for 510 yards. They only had 170 this game.
Right.
All that. That's what'll happen. If he continues to win and they keep shaking up the college football world, you're right. He will get his due, but I just think the bravado over one game and all that it just wasn't necessary.